Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Keith Tebow from FRC Media. We are trying our best to speak to as many candidates as we head into the September 6th state primary. Joining me today is attorney Shannon McMahon. She is looking to unseat current district attorney Tom Quinn in the Democratic primary coming up on the 6th of September. Shannon, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, a lot of people may not know about you. I know you're from Swansea.
That's correct.
But a lot of people in Fall River even may not know, even though it's 2 towns over, they may not know much about Shannon McMahon. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be the next district attorney.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Swansea, graduated from Case High School in '98, then went to Roger Williams University, then got married, had my children, decided to go to law school. Before then I was a paralegal from 1999 till I went to law school. I went to UMass Law, graduated top of my class. I worked my way through law school because I had to. You know, I had two small kids at the time, a two-month-old and a 2-year-old. So I worked as a student teacher at UMass Law, taught the first years, and then I was a Superior Court judicial clerk here in Bristol County in Fall River, in New Bedford, and Taunton. Also bartended at nights. So, you know, kind of a hard worker, dedicated. But yeah, why I wanted to run, it's always been a lifelong dream. You know, I mean, this is why I worked so hard in law school and in every job I've had. You know, I was hired by the trial court to be the Superior Court judicial clerk after graduation, which I did. After that, I became a criminal defense attorney. After that, I became an assistant district attorney, and now I'm a civil litigator. You know, you can only sit back and watch things go badly for so long before you've got to get off the bench and do something about it. I got tired of watching this office become complacent. You know, it's been an uncontested race for 16 years. You know, my opponent, the current DA, has been in for 8 years. He was unopposed. He was never really elected. He was appointed. And I got tired of hearing the same old stuff. I got tired of hearing them resting their laurels on things of the past, as opposed to thinking about the future. You know, I'm raising teenagers in this world right now, and it's a scary place right now. You know, I've spoken to thousands of voters, and the common theme is that people don't feel safe. They feel like crime is up, but when you hear from the district attorney's office, they're telling you everything's fine. That's not really transparent. You know, I think that we can do better. I think we can be safer. I think we can be smarter. I think we can keep up with the times. You know, I'm watching other courts like Plymouth County and Barnstable County doing these innovative things that are working, like expanding their drug court, having a mental health court, having a veterans court. These are things that we should have already had. But again, when you're only focused on the past and not focused on the future, you're letting these things go. Yeah. So, you know, at that point, like I said, you can only complain so long before you've got to become the change. Right. So that's what I did.
You know, one of the things that's unique about this race, it's the only local race, and I mainly mean Bristol County race, and even here in Fall River, where the primary's going to decide it.
That's
right?
Correct.
There's no Republican running in November. How difficult is that, knowing that generally, you know, state primaries, voter turnout is not where we all would like it to be?
So, you know, normally I would absolutely agree with you. Yeah. I think that women in particular are very upset about the decision overturning Roe. I have come out publicly time and time again saying emphatically I am pro-choice. I would have, had I been the district attorney at the time, signed the national petition that Maura Healey and other Massachusetts district attorneys signed, vowing not to extradite or prosecute anybody receiving or caring for or performing an abortion. And many other district attorneys all across the country, from red states and blue states, have signed that petition. My opponent is anti-choice. And I do believe that although most times a lot of people don't vote in the primaries, I think that we're going to see a big turnout, because I think women want elected officials who believe in such an important issue like women's rights to govern their own bodies.
How difficult has it been for you, though, to get that specific message out on that specific issue, when a lot of times when we hear about the abortion vote, it tends to be Democrat versus the Republican on the ballot?
So, and again, the message we're trying to tell people is this is a Democratic primary. Who do you believe is a true Democrat? And I think women believe that if they're Democrat, that is an enormous issue. I think here in Massachusetts, and especially in Bristol County, I think it's an enormous issue. I think most of Bristol County is pro-choice, and my opponent is not. In terms of getting that message out, of course, it's always difficult to get your message out, especially going against an incumbent with deep pockets and who's been there forever.
So during the summer.
During the summer, right. Which has been very hot, by the way. So what I've been doing is actually just speaking to the voters, as many as I can every day, getting out there, talking to people as often as possible. And I think you said you checked out my website and my Facebook page. You can see exactly that we've been doing that. Unlike my opponent, who again is the incumbent in deep-seated pockets, I have to be the one to be there every single time. It's got to be me because that's the way it goes when you're going against an incumbent. You have to be the visible one. You have to be the one being out there holding signs, waving to people, having these conversations. And it's been eye-opening. It's been wonderful. I've had the pleasure of speaking to so many voters here in Bristol County, and I've gotten their respect and their nomination, to be perfectly frank. But hearing about what's important to the voters in Bristol County has really been something, and it solidified my conviction that we really need to focus on safety right now, because a lot of people don't feel safe. They feel the drug crisis is out of control. There's a huge mental health crisis, especially with our juveniles right now, and there's a gun violence problem.
Well, let me ask you about that. Does some people may say, well, a district attorney is there to prosecute criminals in a fair and balanced manner, right? But they're not law enforcement. They're not the ones that would be on the streets to battle crime and get drug dealers off the streets. But is there a role a district attorney can play with not necessarily the law enforcement, but maybe one of the issues that we hear about a lot of time is recidivism, right? People in the system coming back.
Exactly, and that's been our platform. We've got to be smarter on crime. Okay, in order to be tough on crime, you have to be smart on crime. And to do that, we need to have these specialty courts, which other jurisdictions have, such as the Recovery Court for Drug Addiction, for the veterans, for the men and women who have served our country, so we can give them an opportunity to rehabilitate, and a mental health court. If we get these nonviolent offenders into treatment, it's one less person who's going to reoffend, right? So we're already tackling crime right then and there. It also frees us up to go after the violent offenders and those trafficking in fentanyl, in methamphetamine, in heroin, which are killing our citizens and killing our children. But we can do this in a balanced and fair approach, where if we, like I said, if we can stop 1-2 people from committing another crime, we're being smarter on crime. My opponent likes to keep saying he's got a 90% solve rate. Police solve crime. Prosecutors prosecute crimes. There's a difference. His statistics are not accurate. I feel that he's not been transparent. It's a switch and bait. We've solved 95 crimes, but we've only convicted of 46% this year.
One of the things that has been an issue in Bristol County and in all courts for a while, and obviously, you have to work closely with the judiciary, the district and superior courts, is a backlog of cases.
Yes.
That's brought up a lot. COVID obviously had a negative impact on that. Things are still behind, but they were behind prior to COVID, right? How do you work with, is part of what you just said, part of the fact that, less people being prosecuted will open up those backlogs? So is there anything else that can be done?
No, I mean, that's the genius of it, right? It works. It's effective. We know for a fact that treatment works. So it's dual purpose. We get people help, we stop the recidivism, and we loosen the backlog from the courts, which, like you said, has always been backlogged. But that's what happens when you treat users the same as dealers. You can't do it all. So let's fix what we can fix and prosecute what we can prosecute.
You mentioned you were a prosecutor in that office under previous district attorneys.
Yes.
For Bristol County. What have you learned from there that, or even your time there, that you think that you can bring to the office?
So I was fortunate enough to be the prosecutor who did the recovery court. Back then it was called the drug court when I was there. And that was just, it was just really something to be a part of. I think that's where I get my passion for expanding the recovery court, because I have firsthand knowledge of its effectiveness. We worked very hard. These cases are very difficult. There is an emotional investment as well. But if you've never been to a recovery court graduation, I strongly suggest you do. There are very few times in criminal law and working at the DA's office where you get such gratitude, such a warm feeling, when you see something through to the end. When you see somebody finally getting better, getting on track, getting their family back, getting a job, getting a license. You're a part of that. You get to watch this. Most times as a prosecutor, all you see is, you got your case, do your trial, and you don't see them again until the next time they come back around. Right. With the recovery court, you actually get to see the entire thing through, and that really is, it really just is something.
Yeah. One of the other things that the district attorney is heavily involved with is, we've touched upon, a local law enforcement. Mm-hmm. How important is to keep those lines of communication open? And I guess, what are you hearing from how the current district attorney has dealt with local law enforcement? And I want to get into specifics about bad cops. We'll get that in part two.
Yeah.
But in terms of general, relationships with local police departments.
So it's imperative that any prosecutor or district attorney has a very good working relationship with the police. We work together every day, which is why I have vowed to always have an independent investigator should there ever be a conflict of interest. And when you work directly with these police officers, when I was a prosecutor in New Bedford, I worked directly with my police officers every day. I knew what their husbands and wives did for a living. I knew what their kids played for sports. There's no way you can investigate that particular police officer. You've got a conflict. Whether you can think you can overcome it or not, that's not your decision. If there's a conflict, get independent outside investigator to deal with that. And I think that protects the police from a faulty investigation, and it protects the community from feeling that there's a cover-up. So it's dual purpose, right? And that's how you protect that relationship, and that's how you keep that relationship with the police so strong, because you can have their back by saying, listen, I can't do this. I know you. We work together. So let's get an independent investigator. In that way, if it comes back that you did nothing wrong, great.
Because of national news and even some local instances where police may have overstepped their bounds, there tends to be sometimes a generalization that cops are bad. As district attorney, obviously you can't take that tact, but you also have to be cognizant of the fact that there are some bad apples, right?
There are, and I've been fortunate enough to work with the police officers here in Bristol County. A lot of them I've known since I was a kid, because I grew up here and we all went to high school together. And there are some absolutely fantastic police officers out there. When I was at the DA's office, one of the police officers in New Bedford, when I was on my honeymoon, we were dealing with a sex crimes case, and one of our victims was evicted and they were homeless. One of my police officers and I spent the entire honeymoon on the phone with each other, getting them a hotel room, getting them pizza. That's just one example of thousands of how much work these men and women do and how much heart they put into the job. Now, that being said, there are bad apples. There's bad apples in every single profession. There's bad apples in the legal profession. But you can't paint everybody with the same brush. You've got to take every single case by case, and that's the way you think you handle that.
Another role of the district attorney's office for many years has been one of education, not only in schools but also in the broader community, working with seniors and veterans and others to educate them about their rights and their ability to come forward if they need to. How do you hope to improve upon what may have been done, and how do you maybe make some changes?
Sure. So right now, given what is going on the streets with the fentanyl and now methamphetamine being out there, it's all hands on deck. We got to get into these schools. There is fentanyl marijuana is being laced with fentanyl, cocaine is being laced with fentanyl, heroin is being laced with fentanyl, and fentanyl can kill you very quickly. We have to get into the schools at a young age, at a significantly younger age than we're doing, to educate these kids about the dangers of what is out in the streets right now. There was a young man in Connecticut who smoked marijuana for the first time. He was 15 years old, overdosed and died because it was laced with fentanyl. These are the scariest times, because we're talking about teenagers who, I have some. They don't think all the time. They don't think things through all the time. And it is a dangerous, dangerous world out there. We have to get into the schools and educate them first and foremost. We also need to get a better working relationship with the community and the police department, as well as the district attorney's office. Speaking to as many voters as I have, especially here in Fall River, there's a lack of trust right now between the police, the DA's office, and the community, and that has to be healed. It really does, because if we have a community that is afraid to call the police or afraid to call the district attorney's office, we're going to see a big mess coming up pretty soon.
At a local debate, which actually was held yesterday, as we're talking in the middle of August, there was talk about some cold cases. The district attorney says he's working hard on that. It was brought up. I was a young reporter when the highway killings case was about, and I covered many of those discoveries. That's one of the many unsolved cases.
It is.
How difficult is it to balance what's happening right now in front of you as a district attorney, but also still needing to keep an eye on what happened in the past, because there are victims there that are looking for justice?
So, it's a balancing issue, right? My opponent has decided to do it in an election year, 3 months before the election. I think that the voters see through that. Had he been dealing with this kind of all the way along, then I think there would be a little bit more respect for that. But we've got major problems that are happening right now. Like I said, especially in Fall River, it feels like every time I turn on the news, there's another shooting, another stabbing, and the offenders are getting younger and younger. So that's a huge problem. To say that everything's fine, and look, I'm looking for cold cases, it makes it feel like you're not paying attention to what's actually happening today. And that goes with complacency, and that's why we've been saying, I was tired of the complacency. You can't rest your laurels on things that happened 8 years ago and the things you've done for the past 4 months, or 7 months since I pulled papers. What's happened in the 7 years in between? That's the important question.
You mentioned about a lack of trust from a lot of residents. I think particularly you would see that in our Bristol County cities, Fall River, New Bedford, Taunton, maybe even Attleboro. And you've talked, in your platform about, overcoming the perception of inequality, or maybe the reality of inequality.
Yeah.
Right? How difficult can that be? Because there's a lot of, preconceived perceptions by a lot of people, and as we say, we all have opinions, like we have noses. How difficult is that?
Well, you watched the debate last night. As I said, the first step in fixing a problem is identifying that there is one. Right now, there is one. So let's keep our eyes open. And if you take that information and you take every case by case, and you apply equal and fair justice, then you'll be all right.
Yeah.
But if you ignore that there's a problem and pretend it doesn't exist, that there is no racial inequality, especially in the inner cities, then of course you're not going to fix the problem. You're pretending there isn't one.
Yeah. If elected, there are, when you have a new district attorney or a new executive in government, a lot of times there's turnover, and you hope it wouldn't impact cases. What would you do in terms of current staffing at the DA's office, and you're still going to keep that continuity? Cases are still being tried before courts.
Believe it or not, there are so many wonderful prosecutors that work at the DA's office. Of course they would stay. I would hope that they would stay. I have the utmost respect for them. The Special Victims Unit is just, they're the best in the field. They're the best in the world as far as I'm concerned. There are some absolutely fantastic prosecutors. The changes I'd be making would be coming from the top. Obviously, the top 4 people, the top highest paid 4 jobs. I think there's 2 first assistants, a second assistant, a deputy. None of those people live in Bristol County. Obviously, I'd like to recreate that so we can get that grant writer position I was speaking about,
Right.
and so we can get people who live in Bristol County to be kind of those top paying jobs. Bristol County is a wonderful place to be an attorney. I love practicing here. It's it's a very small, knit, very tight group of people. I have the utmost respect for these people, and we have UMass Law. We have the public law school. Why aren't our highest paid prosecutors coming from here? I think that when you deal with this type of community with quite honestly, this much crime, I think it's imperative that you go home to it, because your decisions are going to have a ripple effect.
Yeah. You're looking to make history in this race.
I
You're
am.
the first woman to run.
I am, yes.
Obviously.
I think we already made history.
Yeah, exactly. In some ways you have. You'd be the first woman district attorney. Can that make a difference? And how do you view it as potentially making a difference?
I take it as an honor. I take, even if I wasn't the first woman candidate, I take it as an honor that so many people, nominated me and support me and want this change. Do I think it's a major issue? Not really. I think that the issue of Roe v. Wade, as we discussed, is a bigger issue, and I just think that's happenstance. But I do believe that, like I said, it's a huge honor to be the first woman. But even if I wasn't, it would be a huge honor because, like I said, this has been a lifelong dream of mine since I was a little kid.
Just to serve in that role, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially, here in Bristol County.
Excuse me. We're just about ready to wrap up. I want to give you just a minute or two. That black camera over there is our viewers. So I'll give you an opportunity to kind of tell the viewers, Democrats, who can vote on September 6th, why they should consider Shannon McMahon.
Well, I'm qualified, I'm energetic, I'm eager, I'm ready to be the change that Bristol County needs. This is not a typical race, as we discussed. There is no Republican challenger. Whoever wins on September 6th will become your next district attorney. If you don't feel safer now than you did 8 years ago, I urge you to get out and vote on September 6th for me, Shannon McMahon.
All right, Shannon, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Best of luck in the race.
I appreciate it.
And again, it's one and done. If you win, it'll be,
I'll be on vacation on the 7th.
Until January when you take office, right?
That's correct.
All right, Shannon, thank you for joining us.
Thank
and all
you.
the best. And thank you for watching us here on FRC Media. And please make a point to vote on Tuesday, September 6th.